the dragon blood tree. Traditionally, people would dip their tip of their arrow or dart in this powerful curare mix, causes something to become instantly paralyzed.
Un, dos, tres meses después. Cuatro, cinco, seis, yeah, 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 yeah. Siete, ocho, nueve, tú me estás gustando más. 10, 11 meses, estamos locos de verdad. 12 meses y quiero más. 12 meses y quiero más. 12 meses, ven pa' acá, quedamos para más. Quedamos para más.
Hola, my name is Rosa. I'm a National Geographic explorer, UNESCO awarded Indigenous scientist, founder of Amazon Research International, and author of The Spirit of the Rainforest. And this is the only place on the internet where I will share raw and unfiltered opinions about our modern scientific world and the traditional knowledge of our ancestors. So come explore with me.
No pudiste esperar 4 días y ya. No pudiste esperar.
Today, we will talk about one of my favorite topics and one that I get a lot of questions on. Do we have medicines that have come from the Amazon forests? Do we have modern medicines that have been inspired on or have come directly from the Amazon forest? Could there be a cure out there in the jungle that we have no knowledge about that could help our humanity today? So today we'll be talking about modern medicines that are saving millions of lives that have been inspired on the Amazon forest. Plant medicine. It is a concept that goes as back as we can even think about. How did our ancestors treat illnesses whenever they fell sick? There is scientific records that Neanderthals, the hominid species before us, Homo sapiens, were already chewing on certain plants that help relieve pain whenever they had toothaches. So there was already some sort of medicinal plant knowledge in our ancestors throughout history. Of course, as we explore different cultures and areas around our globe, we find records that this expands all the way from India to China to Europe, North America, and of course, South America. There are some places where we just don't have written records, but instead we have living oral traditions that to this day give us a glimpse as to how did our planet deal with illnesses and different medical conditions in the past. And our ancestors always relied on what was around them, natural medicine. This is really similar to how my grandmother, a traditional healer from the Andes, describes she acquired her deep knowledge. She was living in the mountains and didn't really have access to Western hospitals or even doctors. And so she would go out with the elders into the high altitude mountains, look around, and she would learn from them that every plant from the smallest to the largest is medicine, which is a saying that she repeats to this day, that nature holds so much wisdom, including the potential to cure different illnesses. What I personally always found fascinating was learning that a single natural resource could harbor both powerful life-saving medicines, but also could be poison. One of the reasons that I became a scientist or wanted to dedicate her entire life to explore our natural world comes from traditional medicine. Me seeing my grandmother, who had moved to the city so we could attend school, care for her medicinal garden, a small natural pharmacy she built with her two hands right on her backyard. she would go to these plants and trees and flowers, talking to them and carrying and asking for permission before harvesting. And she had such precise methods to collect roots and stems and leaves and flowers, seeds, and be able to dissect them and prepare them for specific medicinal cocktails that she would make to treat whenever I had upper respiratory infections or where I had some skin issues. And I was fascinated. How is it that a single plant has the power to cure a specific illness? And how is it that when you combine 2, 3, 4 different plants, you get a different result? Now, my grandmother never had the chance to attend school, but yet she had this very deep cultural knowledge that she would share how she learned about this wisdom. At school, I was learning that genetics exist, that there is chemistry knowledge hidden in our world, and what are the properties that these plants could be having that lead to these effects. So it was a merging of worlds that really help inspire how I see the world, which is really try to uncover this incredible hidden knowledge and chemistry that can help our humanity, our society, but that we can also use to help nature back. So now let's talk about some of my favorite examples of modern medicines that to this day save lives, that have been inspired on or derived from the Amazon rainforest. And yet, a lot of people still don't know that we have to thank the Amazon rainforest for them. The first example we'll talk about is known as curare. And I have to back up before we dive deep. Have you guys ever seen videos or photos of people shooting arrows or blowing darts whenever they are exploring the Amazon rainforest? I personally have had the experience to do both. Once I've been visiting the Yawa communities, which is an indigenous tribe in the Amazon. They only have about 2,000 community members still living to this date. I've had the opportunity to meet them many times since I was a little girl. And they have very particular techniques to hunt. They do so by using blowing darts. And so they prepare this device that has such precise engineering where you place your dart and then you can accommodate, and if you are able to control your breathing and the power of your lungs and be very precise, blow into it, and then the dart goes with beautiful precision to your targets. Of course, with me, we were practicing by targeting some wood targets that they were making, and that's how they practice too. It is actually quite hard to uphold it, and you do have, it all comes from the breathing, so you really need to have a lot of discipline with your lungs to be able to get there. In other instances, for example, when I've been working and living with the Ashaninka people, that the largest indigenous group across the Amazon rainforest, there are many communities that still get their food by hunting with arrows, bow and arrows. And many of these communities have taught me how to use these methods. In fact, I actually got to join a school activity where children, since the age of 5 and 6, are already learning how to use the bow and arrow, including the little girls, which I thought was really extraordinary that they were given the opportunity to any child that wanted to learn the technique, not just reserved for the boys. And so I was placed in a line behind the little girls, and each of them was gonna go up front for their chance to show how they were developing their skills. This was part of their daily activities in the classroom, the same way that one may have physical education and you go and throw the ball around. Well, in the Amazon, they go and use the bow and arrow. And so they place a target made out of wood on the other side, make sure everybody's safe and standing behind, and one by one the students got a chance to go up front. So then the little girls with laser precision would position themselves and hold, this equipment and being able to show such beautiful skills. I, on the other side, wasn't the best at it, I have to admit. But that takes me to this joint concept of hunting. What do Amazonian people use to hunt? They dip the tip of the darts or the arrows in something traditionally known as curare. And it connects to modern medicine. We'll get there in a minute. Curare, it comes from the Makushi language that is known as urari, that means kills birds. What is ironic is that the word curare in Latin and Spanish means to heal. It is a combination of plants that ends up creating a very powerful toxic compound that causes something to become instantly paralyzed. And that is what they use to hunt. So traditionally people would dip their tip of their arrow or dart in this powerful curare mix and being able to go and use it to hunt, and then the animal becomes paralyzed, but it doesn't mean the rest of the body becomes intoxicated, and so that they can consume the animal, the hunt. The first records about curare actually date back to when the Spanish conquistadores were going around the Amazonian territories, and then there was even some drawings where you could see the local communities defending their spaces by using these darts or arrows that would be hitting the horses or the people, and the animal and human becoming instantly paralyzed. And it really triggers so many stories around curare. It is this mysterious poison, it is this magical substance. What is it made of? How are they preparing it? What is it actually doing to the body? The way that Amazonians prepare curare, it tends to be the combination of two plants, Strychnos toxifera and Cocodendron tomentosum. Two plants that when combined create this specific effect of paralysis that actually happens to act in very interesting ways. The first thing to become impacted are the eyes. They feel heavy. They make the person almost feel feel compelled to close their eyes. The next thing to go is the tongue. So you actually cannot ask for help or scream. The next thing to get impacted are the lungs, which means you do have the sensation of becoming asphyxiated. And then the rest of the limbs and muscles. What is interesting is that the heart is not impacted. The heart keeps pumping. And this became of a lot of interest many years ago because it prompted some scientists to ask, could this be in any way a really powerful solution for surgeries? Now, around the 1850s, we already had some methods for anesthesia in the Western scientific world. Chloroform, cyclopropane, they were these chemical substances that doctors were using to make a patient fall asleep so that they could operate surgery and save lives. However, although the patient was asleep, this didn't inhibit it or stopped involuntary twitches of the muscles that just happen when the person is asleep, which of course puts the whole procedure under danger, really risking the person's lives. So this was like a holy grail in anesthesia and medicine, how to get the patient to stay asleep, not move the muscles, but of course not run the risk that they would die. And so whenever there was these first scientific observations about this incredible Amazonian mysterious recipe of curare, that it gets your entire body paralyzed but not your heart, then it prompted scientists to ask, well, could there be a way that we allow for the lungs to still get oxygen and keep being ventilated so that the person can still stay alive while then they were conducting the surgery? And some of the first experiments actually happened on a donkey, where they apply curare to the donkey and they ensure to mechanically ventilate the lungs and realize that it worked just as they had envisioned. Of course, from there follow a lot of scientific and methodical testing until eventually there were some synthetic derivatives that were created to get the best of the effects from this traditional recipe. That is a beautiful way on how Amazonian traditional actions and rituals were eventually the solution to modern medicine. Another beautiful example is known as the dragon blood tree. Scientific name is Croton lecleri. It is known as the tree that bleeds to heal others. It is also known as the doctor of the forests. It is a tree that I actually grew up with. I remember my parents and my uncles and aunts, they would bring us small flasks filled with this thick and deep dark resin or latex that we would keep on our medicinal cabinets. And so whenever I would cut myself or have any injuries on my skin as a child, instead of necessarily applying a bandage and cleaning that, I would actually go first to the dragon blood tree and I would take some of this latex, which is the color of this deep dark resin, and I would apply it on my skin. And the moment you start to rub it, this dark red color becomes actually kind of like a white paste. We even know it as the liquid bandage because a lot of the injuries I used to have as a child, that's how we care for them. And that was always one of these natural resources that started to trigger so many questions in my head. How is it turning from this dark red to white? Why is it changing almost texture? What is it doing on my skin that it helps heal so quickly whenever I have a cut or an injury, or if I've accidentally burned myself? Well, over time, I learned that I was not the first one, of course, to ask these questions. This important medicinal tree in the Amazon has led to so much curiosity around the world. Besides the resin being applied topically or directly on the skin, people also dilute them into teas and also drink them. I've had family members that were suffering from different issues like ulcers or diarrhea, and those are traditional uses of this Amazonian native tree to help with those illnesses. Eventually, with modern scientific methods, we learned that there are many active ingredients in this powerful dragon blood tree, like taspin, and eventually in 2012, even leading to an FDA approved medicine known as crofelemer to treat HIV related diarrhea, where the latex is actually used directly to obtain this medicine. This ancestral Amazonian medicine is literally saving people's lives directly harvesting from the rainforest. Of course, that also triggered different questions about how are we harvesting? Are we actually doing it sustainably? Are the communities that keep these trees alive and protected being benefited? And I think there are still many gaps in these questions that we can do a better job now. And I think that is why approaching these topics with science, but also with an indigenous wisdom lens, is just as critical so we can find tangible solutions to regenerate a rainforest while also advancing medicine. Curiously, dragon blood tree attracted so much curiosity that in the late 1800s, early 1900s, it even prompted European explorers to take the seeds to other countries like Indonesia, where many hectares of these trees were planted. And that's actually considered one of the first global cases of something known as biopiracy, which is this idea that there's no control over borders about native trees growing in an area being taken somewhere else. Because if it's native to one area, it's native there for particular reasons. When we change things in our ecosystem, we have an effect on the rest of plants and animals around. But now we know better. Another great example is the tree Cinchona officialis. That is actually the national tree of Peru. You see it in our flag. Many years ago, there was a Spanish countess lady called Chinchon that fell sick with symptoms of now of what we know now as malaria. And at the time in Peru, traditional elders brought her a powder made with a native tree bark. The lady improved, and this really prompted the curiosity of many Europeans at the time, who took some of this powder to be able to give it to scientists and try to figure out, is there an actual medicine here that could be helping malaria? And that is what led to the discovery of quinine, one of the world's first treatments against malaria that is actually still used to this day for very special resistant cases. Now that inspired the making of derivatives from this molecule that are also being broadly used. And again, an incredible example on how traditional knowledge really inspired a solution to help humanity in a time when we had no other solution. One of the most famous examples of a modern medicine derived from nature in the Amazon rainforest is the medicine known as captopril. Some of my family members in Peru take it. It is used to lower the blood pressure and help with heart failure. But how did this medicine come to be? Back in the day, when plantain workers were in Brazil, people started to notice that when they were bitten by a specific snake, the Brazilian pit viper, scientifically known as the Bothrops jararaca, the person would literally pass out because their blood pressure would drop so much. And they started to notice that that snake happened to live in these plantain crops. And so that occurrence happened one too many times. Until a scientist asked the question, the person is not necessarily dying, but their blood pressure is dropping so quickly. What is it within the snake venom that is leading to this effect? Could that, in a way, inspire a medicine that helps drop the blood pressure of people just enough to help with their health? That is exactly what happened. This led to decades, of course, of research, really complex chemical and biological work, which eventually led to the development of molecules inspired on this snake venom that lead to that exact effect, lowering blood pressure and helping with heart failure. To this day, captopril and its derivatives is one of the most highly prescribed medicines worldwide, and yet very few people know we have to thank Amazonian snakes for it. It is estimated that less than 1% of Amazonian plants have been explored in modern times with current scientific methods. That is mind-blowing because I think there are so many incredible solutions for our planet. As a Peruvian, as a native, with indigenous upbringing, I am also very aware of what this could mean for our nature. And so I think that the solution is to unite both knowledge systems and to have more locals lead the work. Because I don't think it's necessarily about saying, no, let's not look for solutions, but let's do it in a way that it helps to regenerate our forests, it helps to boost our natural species, and it helps to drive local economy that truly benefits indigenous communities. So when we talk about losing the rainforest, we're not just talking about losing the incredible wildlife and jaguars and anacondas and bees and incredible, beautiful rivers and mountains. We're also talking about potentially losing so many modern medicines that could help our planets. So every time a plant disappears, a potential cure does too. So it is imperative that we encourage for more science to happen in ethical and respectful ways, and that we support more indigenous communities that want to take on the science themselves, like what we're doing with our partners across the Peruvian Amazon. Also, this reminds us that we should be supporting medicinal gardens with our work. We're actually helping develop medicinal gardens across different indigenous cultures, including Kukama, Shipibo, and Ashaninka, and hopefully being able to drive a new way where science is helping to uphold and respect indigenous knowledge while literally helping to regenerate our flora. So what would you be curious to know more of? Or what are other questions that come to mind? Let me know in the comments below. I'll be making a video answering everyone's questions and diving deep in any other topic that may interest you. I'll see you next time for another story.